A3, how did it get this name? Does anybody know?
Paper size.
Paper, size of a paper. Do we have A3 paper in the U.S.? No, we have 11 by 17s. It's close. It's not quite the same.
A3.9 you have.
What?
A3.9.
A3.9.
It'll work for our purposes.
So in the A3 report, we're using a concise way to express information. So it's interesting, they're actually pushing at Toyota now to go from an A3 size down to what's the letter size for them? A1, A2? A4, A4. So they're trying to push it down to that so that you can get even more concise with it. So continuously improving their reporting methodology also. But that's, I mean, an A3 report is difficult to start using, but once you've started using it, you sort of understand it. So it's the typical standard format for problem solving. There's multiple ways to use the A3. You can use it for problem solving. You can use it for proposals. You can use it for just reporting. There's different ways of using that. We're going to talk about the problem solving one mostly here. And there's typical sections: the theme, background, what the current condition is, what are the goal you're trying to achieve, what's the root cause analysis, what countermeasures can we come up with to solve the problem, how do we confirm that we did that, and what are the follow-up actions that need to take place. But what's important really isn't the format that you use. It's more about the way of thinking. That's the way you think through the problem. So it lays out the plan on one sheet of paper. It has to be visual and extremely concise. Why do they want it visual?
So everybody will be on like the same page.
So how long does it take? Oh, that's a good answer. But how long does it take to read a problem statement and read the answers in written form? Some people read fast, some people read slow, and some people comprehend, some people don't comprehend. But what about a picture? It's pretty easy to tell, right? And if I'm only using one page to do this, and I need to write lots of words to describe it, or I can use a picture. You know that old thing, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's actually true. Okay? So they want to use visual. It tells a story. It's laid out from the left-hand upper side down to the right-hand lower side. This is the way you read it. It allows us to understand the process, reach consensus. Why do they talk about consensus?
If it's going to be standardized, it has to be sort of agreed upon.
You have to agree to it, right? And the only way to come to that agreement is to come to consensus. What does consensus mean? Doesn't have to be. That's what we all hope it is, right? It hopes that we're all in agreement. But consensus doesn't mean that I necessarily agree, but I accept what the answer is, and I'm willing to go forward with that. I may have a different opinion of what the answer should have been, but I understand what you've said, and I understand what your approach is, and I'm willing to go forward with that with my full effort. Okay? That doesn't mean that I agree with it, and we don't all have to agree. And you're not going to agree when you're out in industry.
It also means you take due care in trying to make sure that everybody's satisfied and do agree, because they may have a perspective that needs to be incorporated in the solution. So you must work to try to get agreement. At a minimum, you have consensus where everybody goes along with it.
Right. It connects the problem with the solution and persuades others of what the solution should be. So this needs to be a tool that you can use to express what you think the problem is, express what you think the solution is, and how we're going to go do that so that you can get that consensus. It allows you to have dialogue within the organization. So by surfacing these at the root cause level, you're able to go and start politicking is a terrible word to use these days, but it's a way to go out and start talking with others and helping them to come to the understanding of what the problem is and the solution that you want to go do. So it encourages involvement in the problem solving. And the reason that one of the reasons they really like using the A3 and these standard formats is it really forces the 5S of information. What is 5S about?
We haven't talked about that yet.
Okay, but you have a team that's doing it, right?
Yeah.
So 5S is a way of cleaning and organizing and managing the way we go about doing our jobs and the work that we're doing. Same thing happens here. We're able to organize our thinking and our problem solving. So all the projects, whether they're big or small, use these A3s. And when you're creating an A3, what you're trying to do is tell the story of what the problem is and what the solution is. And this doesn't sound like engineering at all, does it? How many people feel uncomfortable right now? Do we have any storytellers in here? I know Dr. Black is. So how many people do you like telling stories? Y'all got to wake up here. I need some feedback. Come on. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So being able to tell the story explains what the problem, and you can explain what the problem is. So you want to know whether you're doing a proposal or whether you're trying to make an improvement or you're trying to solve a problem, what is the story that goes along with this? Because that gives not only what the issues are, but what the context is, so that you understand why the solution is what we want it to be. It's 4 to 7 boxes based on the type of where you are in the problem-solving process right now. Each box contains visuals and graphs and sketches. You only use words when you just absolutely have no other way to communicate what it is that you're trying to do. So this is an example of a A3 approach. John Shook, who wrote the book Learning to See, who's going to be here in October to talk with us, developed this template. It's not the only template to be used. There's other templates that can be used, but this is a general one that can be used. We're going to go through each of the areas. But you have a background. You got the situation, what the goal is, how are we analyzing it, what are we recommending, what's the plan to do, and how we're going to follow up with it. So if you can see, if I could fill all that out on the problem that I'm working on, that's a pretty fast way of explaining what things are going on in the issue that we're trying to overcome. So let's talk about each of the pieces. Up at the top, there's a theme up here, and it's really asking, what are you actually talking about? This describes it describes what the problem is. It's typically one statement, and you want that one statement to be very descriptive of what you're trying to accomplish. You need to be objective when you describe it, and it should focus on observed problems, not advocating any particular solution. So you don't want to say implementation of a single-minute exchange of die at press 3. That may not be what the problem is at press 3. Let's describe what the problem is at press 3. It could be too much downtime at press 3. It could be that it's a total productive maintenance issue. It could be an OEE issue. It could be the changeover issue. It could be a lot of those things, right? In the background section, we're going to talk about document any kind of information that's essential to understanding what the problem is there and how we're trying to solve that problem, or what the problem is we're trying to solve. We want to communicate the background. We try to do it visually, so you want to be able to use some kind of graph or chart or flow diagram or something to explain what's actually going on here. Because somebody's going to walk up, say the vice president's walking the floor, and comes up to you and says, "Okay, show me what problem you're working on. What's your A3?" And you pull it out. Well, it may be a problem. It may be a process that he's not actually familiar with. But if you have the process graphically described in that section in the background, now you can go through and explain to him really quickly what it is you're trying to solve, what the problem is, and they can grasp it. You want to make the context of the situation as clear and visual as possible. You want to identify the target audience. Okay, am I doing my A3 for my supervisor, or am I doing this A3 for the board of directors? There's two different approaches I want to use there, right? You want to provide what information the audience needs to know before they can go forward. So you need to present all of the information that's required before you get into understanding what the solutions might be. How does this topic align with our company goals? Toyota looks at it and says it's all about production. How do we standardize and optimize our production process? So if there's a problem out there, you can reduce time out of the process. Toyota doesn't say, "Oh, well, let's go figure out if that's the right thing to go do." They say it's all about the time in the process. But that's an automatic. If this does that, then that's what we're going to go do. You need to include any kind of historical information, dates, names, or anything else that might help explain what the problem is. The current condition is the most important section of the A3. What is it that we're dealing with? What are the problems? You try to make it very simple for the reader, again, using visuals by charts and graphs and tables. The data should always be actual data, not just something that you guessed about. You need to be able to show this data came from that piece of equipment, or this came from that cell. And these were the days we took that data over it. And what we want to do is look at the overview of the current state of the process, highlight the key factors in there, and identify the real problem in the current state, you being quantitative in the way we approach it. For goal statement on our problem-solving A3s, it needs to look at least two things. One, how will we know that the project is successful at the end of the implementation? And two, what is the standard or basis of comparison that we used? How are we measuring it, and what are we comparing it to? Those are the things we want to look at as a goal. So the goal may be we need to take 2 seconds out of this cycle time, out of this piece of equipment to meet our TAC, right? So why are we doing that? The goal we align with is to meet TAC, right? We want to make sure that we're always meeting our customer demand. So clear goals, clear measure of performance. How are you going to collect the data? Root cause analysis. So failing to address any kind of root cause means that the problem is probably going to happen again. Right? If you don't fix the problem's going to show back up. So there's a lot of tools that we can use in root cause. One of them was the 5 whys. Somebody here said using the 5 whys. Has anybody used the 5 why approach before? Got a couple. So what does 5 why mean?
You ask why 5 times and eventually you'll get to the root of the problem.
Okay. Why?
Because it keeps every why gets to a deeper step of the process. So say a part keeps having this defect. Yes, why is it having this defect? Well, this machine's having this problem. Why is the machine having this problem? Eventually, you have enough time to get to the root of the problem.
Right. Good answer. Good answer. So if you ask why is something happening, the first thing you're going to get is the obvious answer, right? Okay. But is that obvious answer the real problem? So you continually ask why and dig deeper and deeper, peel that onion back more and more. And if you ask 5 times, you'll finally get down to what the real problem is. Experimentation, design of experiments. There's a lot of different ways we can go do that. Ishikawa diagram. Anybody know what an Ishikawa diagram is? Fishbone diagram. And what does that mean?
Basically, you have 4 measures to measure: man method, measurement, materials, and those are like the big goals. And then you have to.
You list out on each of those branches. You come off and say, here's a problem that could be. Here's a problem. So it's a way of us going through and analyzing what the problem is. Pareto analysis. Most people understand what Pareto analysis is. You want to attack the one that's causing you the biggest problem right now. The 80-20 rule. There's a lot of other ways of doing root cause, but the goal of doing this root cause analysis is to make sure that we are understanding cause and effect. Because if we don't understand cause and effect, we're just guessing at what the answer might be. Okay. So you want to show what the root cause is. Y'all can read the key points on there. I want to get down to what the fun stuff today. So countermeasures address the root causes using lean design principles. We've talked about lean design principles in here, focusing on what the corporate goals are. How the goal of Toyota in their production operations is to optimize production, right? Minimize all of the waste in that system and allow us to produce at the most efficient way possible, because that's where we make profit, right? The goal is to move the organization closer to the ideal state. We're going to talk about current state, future state, and what that might mean. It's a action list of the problems that how it's going to be addressed. It's important to know what did not work as much as it is important to know what did work when we go do this. So the things that didn't happen, right? We learn from that, right? You learn that, okay, that didn't solve the problem, but we made a little bit of progress on it. So we want to make sure, though, that we're addressing what those root cause problems are. The check or confirmation of effect, or the plan section of this, is a list of activities for implementation and who's going to be responsible for what and when. So this is your project management tool section, right? Where you're saying, here's what we're going to do, who's going to do it, this is the team, this is when they're expected to have it completed by. Okay? So this is how we manage our project. It should also, though, be establishing that causal link between the action items that we had and what we observed as being the problems. So we need to make sure that we're doing that, and we want to make sure that, again, we're understanding the cause and effect relationship. And then follow up. This is the act step of the PDCA effort. It reflects on what further changes should be made. In Toyota, they'll tell you one of the most important parts of their problem-solving capabilities is the reflect stage. You need to step back and reflect on what all you did, what all you accomplished, and that helps them to understand where they missed it, where they needed to go do something a little bit more, maybe what they did in a way that shouldn't have gone that direction, or what they really did well, and how to do it. We don't do a good job of celebrating successes for any period of time in U.S. companies. We move on to the next problem, right? We're engineers. We want to solve the next problem and the next problem. So, but at some point you need to step back and take a little bit of time to reflect and celebrate on what the successes have been, because that's how you create a learning environment and create that culture of continuous improvement that you're really trying to achieve. So the other thing in the follow-up section, or the act section, would be, who else needs to know about the findings of this improvement? How do we need to share this across the corporation? And Toyota really is a learning organization, and they're serious about how do we share these successes throughout the organization so that we don't have to go fix the same problem in 6 different places. Okay? Toyota calls this, and I'm not even going to attempt that word, but it translates as lateral deployment of the findings to related groups. So they're really serious about taking this information, what they've learned, and spreading it throughout the organization.
Chrysler called it read across.
Read across, that's right, yeah. Yes?
I'm not sure, but in the US, do you have competitions for QC story where few employees are selected and then they share their QC stories? Do you have such events?
Well, it depends on the company.
No, like the American Society of Quality or something.
Oh yeah, where they highlight specific problems and solutions they came up with.
Or they have competitions
Yeah,
where
yeah.
Everybody comes from every industry and presents.
Yeah. There are examples of that where you host I'll tell you one thing that DMDI did just a couple of months ago was a hackathon. We had a bunch of production data. We came up and figured out ways to analyze that data to come up with potential solutions for problems within the production process. And we had different teams doing that, and from all different companies that would do. Yeah, they have several of those. So these are some examples of some A3s that I've done or I've been involved with. This one actually has to do with a coil tube cell, and it was a Kaizen event. You see, so we're saying here's what the title is. So if somebody comes up and says, "What are you working on?" We're working on the coil tube cell, right? That's where the problem is. The background was based on future state values, stream map, and whatever date that was. The Kaizen event was selected to address objectives of changing the layout, developing a cell for cut, in finish, cleaning, cold form, braze, cross-trained members. Is there anybody that doesn't understand what we were trying to accomplish there? It's fairly straightforward, right? One quick sentence. But when we talk about the current situation, here's what we did. We showed, here's the layout. This is the path that a coil tube had to go through the plant. So you can see it was making a lot of loops. It was traveling all the way from one end of the plant to the other end of the plant. So we had the analysis of the current situation, what the problems were. We had a goal of creating a manufacturing cell with one-piece flow. And look, here's our new situation, and there's the path that it goes. So we rearranged the equipment. We put it into, co-located it into a cell, and that just validates what everything Dr. Black was talking about cell manufacturing for the last couple of days. So here's the results. We had metrics on here. Here's what it was before. It took 210 minutes. Now it takes 61 minutes. It traveled 650 feet. Now it's 140 feet. Lead time was 4 to 5 days. Now it's an hour. Okay, made somewhat of an improvement with it. But and here's what our follow-up plan was. These are the different things we had to go do. And exactly what Tom was talking, the things that were left that we said, these would have been good things to do in this project, but they're for the next project. And then here's where your next ideas are coming from. This one had to do with a payroll value stream map. Not everything is production. You can use these on administrative processes also. But because we didn't have a lot of ways of doing layout, this had to do more with what was in forms and stuff. There's a lot more words on this one, right? But what we were able to do is show the flow. So we could explain the flow pretty quickly on what we were trying to achieve. here's what the current state was and the different issues that we had with it. These are some of the recommendations that the team came up with, and these bursts over here show what the Kaizen events need to be to go and solve the problems that we addressed back here in the current state. And then here's the follow-up plan. This is who all was going to go do it, and different solutions that were going to be implemented and when they were going to be implemented. Here's a project example on eliminating waste at Morton Salt Silver Springs facility. We had the background here. Here's what the current situation was. And here we use sort of a animated type of layout. Look, it's not the real layout of the facility, so it's a kind of cross between a layout and a flow chart. Okay? The 5 whys was the analysis that we used. So these were the problems we were trying to address. Here's the 5 whys. These are the parts of the process that was. This was what the recommended solution was. Here's the plan we had to go about it. And because this was a little more deeper and Morton wanted some kind of report on it, they actually produced a couple of reports that you go and look at the details of everything on it. But it was able to show pretty quickly what the problem was and how we're going to solve it. Now this is an example of one that you can actually didn't use all 7 of the areas, right? This one's one on a 5S. You can see we use a lot of pictures on it, so you can use pictures to explain what you're talking about. But it's easy to show. Here we scored an 8. Here we scored a 79. Did we make improvement? Yeah.